This is Josh Raven with the Daily Dot, and I am Katowice, joined by YNK, or perhaps more commonly known as Janko, on the analysis desk. We've just finished up day 2 here, everyone's packing up and going home. And I think if we jump straight into the tournament, the real surprise has come on day 2, and that has been Envious, crashing out in the group stage. I think they're playing behind us now against Efrag in a game that determines nothing. In your mind, what do you think has been the cause of Envious not showing up in this tournament and falling well below their expectations?
I think that the main reason is lack of preparation. I talked briefly to MBK. They were boot camping in their villa in France, but he said that people were not 100% focused on the game itself. They were playing other games in their free time, maybe a bit too much. Maybe underestimating their opponents a little bit as well. I guess now they're losing to Efrag because of these shoutouts. But in the end, I mean, the scene is so competitive right now, and losing to Tempo Storm as well, it's just a proof that there are a lot of teams out there who are really hungry to win, who put in a lot of hard work, who are dedicated, who are practicing really hard. And if you get complacent like that, you're going to get punished for it sooner or later. So it may be a good thing for them that this happened now, even though this is also a major tournament in a sense, because the Wild Major is a month from this. So maybe this is a sort of a wake-up call for them.
You mentioned Tempo Storm, and obviously they got the win and they qualified through. And look, tomorrow I believe they face up against Na'Vi in the round of 6 kind of quarterfinal thing that's going on there. Obviously, their run at MLG qualifier that just happened wasn't so good, yet they've come here and been quite a surprise. Do you think they can keep that run going and meet up with Luminosity in the semi-final, or do you think Na'Vi are just kind of too strong?
I mean, looking at my recent experience with the Brazilians, I know that anything can happen with those guys, right? I talked about it on the desk as well, that they're a momentum-based team. Everyone knows, everyone saw the videos of them celebrating their wins, how emotional they are and everything. And if they can get that groove going, anything is possible. Na'Vi hasn't looked that impressive, honestly. I mean, they had a couple of close games that they squeezed out against NIP on Overpass, which should have been, a bigger win for them maybe. The problem is that Na'Vi is the team, out of the Tier 1 teams, they're probably the team with the best map pool. So that's a big advantage for them going into the game. Of course, more experience playing in front of a large crowd tomorrow in the Spodek as well. But yeah, Tempo Storm have surprised me, as you mentioned, because of the qualifier run. I guess that's probably pressure for them knowing that they can make it through, but just not being able to play their best, right? And here they were a bit more relaxed. They knew that they were the underdogs, and they played really well throughout the tournament. Also had Fallen behind them, of course.
Yeah, that's true. We'll see how they do tomorrow as well. And the other semi-final, quarter-final that's happening is going to be Fnatic and obviously Virtus Pro, who just squeezed through. They had to beat FaZe to determine if they would even make it through. And obviously I think the favourites going into that game is going to be Fnatic. But do you think VP, in front of the crowd, in front of their home audience, can cause an upset there?
I mean, it's highly unlikely, honestly, because Fnatic is in a whole different level. Even if VP was at their peak form, they would have a difficult time against this particular Fnatic team. What I liked was the last interview Taz gave. He was still disappointed with their performance, unsatisfied, which is, basically how he should feel after their performance today, right? But he also mentioned that they did not play the VP way. They did not play to destroy their opponents, in his words. They just played to try and win the round, win the half, and so on. And that's why, in his opinion, they lost some of the game. So if they can at least try and do that tomorrow, if they can try and play their old way, then that gives them maybe a fighting chance. But I still, it's going to be a huge struggle for them tomorrow against Fnatic.
Well, moving away from Katowice in general, we'll move on to some other things. You've been highly vocal about the use of statistics and analysis in Counter-Strike. Obviously, you yourself, one of the better analysts out there. What do you think could be added into the game in terms of analysis, or in the game, just to make things easier or better in terms of using that statistical analysis?
I mean, I dislike statistic in the way we have them right now. The raw, like kills, and that doesn't tell you much. What you want to know is the impact of kills. Now, honestly, it's hard to define a stat, to make a stat like that. Also, entry kills, how entry kills, opening duels or whatever. Yeah, sure, someone can get an entry kill, but gets traded immediately. His team gets denied entry into the Bob side, the round is lost, but he still has an entry kill stat, right? So maybe make it somehow that you also, if that can happen automatically, look at the time frame. If you get a kill, but 5 seconds after that, nothing happens, then it's an entry kill, so to speak. Then you have that power play for your team, you have a 5v4 advantage, but yeah, it's really difficult to find meaningful stats. In my opinion, stats as we have them now are only useful if you compare them with some, qualitative data, right? If you have an analyst talking about it and then putting them into context, that's when stats can have some sense. Just saying, this guy had this many kills in a game doesn't mean anything. He can have a lot of exit kills, a lot of kills that didn't influence the course of the round. Although sometimes raw stats do have a lot of meaning. Let's say Nico in this particular group stage had 28 kills per map. He had, I think, per round, at least 1 kill per round, which is impressive, and so on. So in that sense, sometimes raw stats can even can be meaningful.
Well, moving on outside of statistics and analysis and stuff like that, but kind of in a similar field is coaching is something that's come into Counter-Strike. It's been in Counter-Strike before, but it's kind of gaining a bit more traction now as teams add more and more coaches, switching out their coaches, getting new ones. And with the influx as well of this new prize pool money from 1 million from the majors, do you think this is going to kind of incentivize teams and coaches to get more serious with it and start listening to them more and get more serious with their coaching?
Definitely, not just getting a coach, but getting a whole team. It depends how many people, getting coaches, analysts. Because one thing is just to coach your own team and focus on your own game, but you have to focus on your opponents as well. Look at their games, look at their demos, see, if you want to figure out some anti-strats and so on. I mean, just look at it. Look at this tournament last year. You had Fnatic with Devilwalk and Vugo. You had VP with Kuban as well. None of the other top teams, Envias, NIP, no one had a coach back then. A year later, I think all of these, maybe even all of the teams in attendance here have a coach. I'm not so sure about Mongols and EFrag don't have one, but I'm pretty sure everyone else has a coach or someone at least standing behind them, right? So obviously it is changing. And yeah, I think teams are going to put even more influence in the future on it because it's a huge asset, and as you said, the stakes are much bigger now, so it makes perfect sense.
As a little side note on that section, do you think having a former player as a coach is a bonus or a negative, or has any impact at all? Because obviously we see Envious picking up Maniac and stuff like that. But do you think that makes an impact, or do you think it's better to have someone outside who hasn't played the game but studies it more?
I mean, it depends on what role you want from your coach, right? If you want your coach to be your in-game leader, probably you want someone who has also played the game, because the difference is, even I, as a former player, when I'm on the desk, I try to put things in perspective of players, because just looking at the game and, obviously with the whole overview, with X-ray and everything, some decisions may seem questionable at times, so to speak, but if you're actually in the player's shoes, you realize how difficult it is to make those calls, to make the correct decision and so on. And someone who has actually played the game can obviously realize that, so probably would want something like that. If it comes just down to anti-stratting or looking at finding out new stuff, maybe you can do on certain maps, new strats and so on, then it doesn't necessarily have to be someone who's played the game professionally at the highest level. It could just be someone who has a good analytical mind, who's passionate about the game, who's willing to put in the hours, because that is a lot of hours you need to put into analyzing stuff for it to have effect, basically.
Well, thank you very much for the interview. I'll let you get to bed so you can go back on the desk tomorrow for those quarterfinals. Thank you very much.
Thanks.